Thank you, Mike. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this first meeting of the Managing Council Tax Arrears Task Group. As you're all aware from the agenda, the first item tonight is appointment of a chair. So could I ask for nominations, please, for the position of chair? Do we have any nominations, please, members?
I'll propose Mike Brader.
Do I have a seconder, please?
Is Mike willing to do it? We've not heard whether he's happy to do it yet, so.
Sorry, just unmuting myself. Yeah, I might need a little bit of guidance, Lynn, if that's okay.
That's fine.
I'll second that if he's happy to do it.
Thank you, Noreen. Do we have any other nominations? I'll take that as a negative then. Are we all in favour of Mr. Councillor Mike Brader as chair? I've only got 3 hands raised.
Is Barbara there?
Councillor Mrs. Brown, can you hear us?
Don't think so.
You're on mute. Can you?
Is 3 not enough to be a majority then?
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, it's yeah. Out of 5, yes, it would be. Yes.
Well done, Mike.
If you'd like to take the chair, Councillor Brader.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda is apologies. So have we received any apologies?
No, Councillor, we're all present tonight. There were no apologies.
Good. And declarations of interest. So to receive declarations of non-pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors. Take that as a no. And pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors. And notice under section 106 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax. Excellent. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the one-page strategy, which is attached to the agenda. Do you have anyone who wants to sort of speak about that? Jerry.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I think it seems to cover the broad topic of the area. For me, I think when we get to who shall we consult, we may need to make a bit of a list like CAB and so on and so forth, really be a bit more specific. That was the only points I wanted to make on it, which I presume when we get to the programme of work, we can look at that in a bit more detail.
I think that sounds like a sensible suggestion. I'm not sure. Is this something that we're sort of fully forming today, or can we add to this when we get to the programme of work or later on down the line?
If I could just clarify, Councillor, the one-page strategy is the scoping document for the review as approved by the Parent Scrutiny Committee.
Yeah.
But if you were to make any substantive changes, you would have to refer it back to the Scrutiny Committee for approval.
Okay.
But it's there as a broad guide, and obviously you can add some pieces of detail into it, as Jerry's already said, going along as part of the programme of work.
Yeah, well, I think the suggestion of citizens' advice would probably fall within the debt advice organisations that are listed on there. So I think hopefully we should be okay with that, but I'm sure we'd be happy to refer it back as well. Noreen.
Thank you, Councillor Braid. I'm just wondering whether we could actually invite the Family Information Service brokerage people, because they do deal with a lot of debt advice as well. It might be enough from citizens' advice, I don't know, but I don't know whether people want to invite them as well, because they do help people with debt as well. Whether they'd be able to attend is another issue, I don't know, but I just put it out there and see what people think.
Great. And what was the name again? Brokerage?
Just Family Information Service brokerage team.
Great.
Thank
Okay.
you.
That sounds good to me.
Yes, good suggestion. And I think that would fall within that debt advice bit as well. Right. Anyone else have any comments on the strategy? I noticed that we'll be making an interim progress report in June. Right, so there's no further comments there. I think we'll go on to item 5 on the agenda, which is scene setting for the review and verbal briefing from the Revenues Manager.
Hello. Yeah, I did just really want to go through with you what we currently do. So just to add to the document that has already been supplied. So what we always do is obviously try and encourage customers to contact us as early as possible. So we, as most of you probably will already know, at sort of the beginning of March, we send out the bills to start on the 1st of April. We do send now about 35% of our bills electronically. So we send them back by email. So obviously then the remainder do go through the post. We have about 73% at the moment on direct debit, and that's over a various of means. Some people still pay their council tax annually, some pay half yearly, but obviously with the majority paying monthly. And we now offer 10 or 12 monthly instalments. So that obviously gives people more of an opportunity to pay on different payment dates. So we offer 4 payment dates on a monthly instalment over the varying times of the month. So we do the 1st, the 12th, the 19th or the 26th, mainly so that it obviously means that people can more pay when they receive their income. We also do weekly direct debit, so weekly, fortnightly and 4 weekly, because depending on when people get their money. So the starting off of the bills we also give people the opportunity then to contact us. So moving on then from once people have received the bills, we do, as part of our recovery programme, we do send a lot more of texts these days. So before we send the first reminders, we'll also send a text. Then we have to send, legally, we have to send a paper reminder to everybody. Even then, obviously, if they pay that and carry on paying, then they'll never receive anything else from us throughout the year. a lot of them contact on those. I mean, the text only says gives it a link to the payment to be able to make the payment, to try and make it as easy as possible for people. We do send if we've got, that's obviously if we've got a mobile number for people. If we haven't, we send them an email. But research has shown that a text has more of an impact than an email, mainly because people don't necessarily open their emails as quickly as their texts is. As I say, then we go on to we obviously encourage contact at that point, because the sooner somebody contacts us, the more likely we are to be able to help them. We send, as I say, then we send the paper reminder. Then we send, if they don't make that payment, then we send them another text before we send the second reminder. So it'll always be that we try and send texts before we actually issue the official documentation. And that has shown, I mean, the first time we ever sent texts, we sent about 50% less in paper bills, paper reminders, sorry, after sending those texts. So it just showed you that the texts do work for a lot of people. And it also means that some people end up getting a text every month before the reminder. We then go through the recovery stages, but at all points they're on all recovery stages are on our website, as well as having, because again, the reminder, but the recovery stages are legislatively documented, so we have to follow those stages before we do certain aspects of the recovery programme. But we do, as I say, we keep encouraging them to contact us. We did used to send out a slip of paper with all the reminders, with giving them all of the citizens' advice and etc., all of the support agencies. But the issue I think we're always going to have is that people sort of say, oh well, we have to make appointments, and sometimes, especially in the current climate, they're a lot longer away. So we do encourage them to contact us to make, and we do obviously make a lot of arrangements with people outside of their normal instalment plan. So all of the information is on our website as well, encouraging them to contact us, encouraging them if they're on a low income to apply for council tax support. So we do, as I said, a lot of the time it's the encouragement of people contacting us. But it's how much further do we want it to go, and that's obviously what why I sort of suggested that we start looking at some of these things as to what is available for people, because again, it's not always just going to be our debt that they've got. It's very often, if somebody's in debt, they're in debt with a lot of other areas as well.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that really interesting background. I think one of the comments pointed out I didn't introduce you properly, so I apologise for that.
Sorry.
No, it's my fault. I sort of, one of the effects of being elected chair at the start of the meeting. Chrissa, and you're the revenues manager.
Yes.
So yeah, apologies for that at the start. I think Noreen's got a question.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Chrissa. I just wanted to ask a question, actually. The discretionary housing benefit payments, they actually cover debts in council tax as well, don't they, when people are in arrears, if they're in serious... Well, when people,
yeah, I mean, it's not an area I cover, because it's more if people apply for council tax support, they obviously apply to the CAST team, and they apply for council tax support, and then that is put against their council tax bill. So that's as such the normal scheme. But then, yes, they can apply for discretionary housing payments as well as discretionary council tax support. So that's dealt with by the CAST team. Yeah.
And how much allowance have we actually got? I don't know if you'd be able to answer the question, but do we have a reasonable amount of money? Is it all used up, this benefit payment money, or is it there, as much as we need it?
Yeah, the DHP money, I don't know how much we have, but that is purely for people for rent.
Yeah.
But the council tax support, we have to fund it ourselves. Last 2021, we obviously had this where everybody was paid the £150. So everybody that was already in receipt of council tax support got an additional £150. And that was we were actually given about, well, I say approximately, but it was about 651,000 in order to give the people another £150. But yes, it was only those that were already in receipt of council tax support received that. But yeah, we do have the discretion, but again, it has to be just funded through the general fund for any council tax support. In addition, we give to people, but the majority of people that apply for council tax support on low income will just receive the normal scheme.
I see.
Amount.
Thanks, Chrissa.
Jerry?
Yeah, thanks for that. That's interesting. It sounds as though you've got a few ideas you'd probably like us to explore with you, which I'd find interesting. So come back to that. Just in the way of numbers, what are we looking at in the way of how many people, do we think are going to be falling into arrears or are in arrears that are coming forward? Really, I'm just trying to get a picture in my mind, if you know what I mean about.
You see, the actual figure that we have to give to the government every year is purely a percentage collection of in-year collection. Sorry. So, for example, this year we've collected about 96.5% within the year, and to be quite honest, for this year we haven't done a great deal of recovery action as we normally would. Mainly because, I mean, although I am responsible for council tax, I'm responsible for business rates and all sundry debt invoices as well. And this year we've obviously been inundated with our grants work, because that's mainly what we've been concentrating on, getting the grants out to the businesses. Yeah. So we haven't done as much recovery action as we normally would, and we've still collected in 96.5%. So it's still a massive amount of money, really. But again, most of it is because we've got the majority of people on direct debits. So, and we also then carry on collecting from previous years. So anybody that's got previous year debt as well, we obviously carry on collecting that alongside the current year. We will always encourage people to pay the current year, and if they can pay anything in addition, to pay it off a previous year. But yes, as I say, we do encourage contact within the year and to keep up to date with the current year. But again, it does, I mean, I have got a sort of a flow chart, but basically you see what happens. We take a person to court for non-payment after they've received 3 reminders, and we've got to have taken them to court in order to take further action. So we will do things like we do attachments to their earnings or attachments to their benefit, and there's a certain percentage that we can actually take from their employed earnings or their benefit income. Again, it's almost then like we still encourage them to contact even before we do one of those. We do then also send them to an enforcement agent, what used to be called bailiffs, and we still, again, we always send them notification before we send them to an enforcement agent, again encouraging contact. So it's just really what we would like to know, if there's anything that people have got suggestions on what else we can do, besides just encouraging them to contact us.
Sorry to interrupt. You're saying you have a flow chart?
Yeah.
I think might be useful. Is that possible to circulate that, just so? Yeah,
I can send it to you. It is always included in the cabinet reports that I do for write-offs. But yeah. If I send it on to Lynn and she can just send it on to everybody, that's the flow chart that gets included with my cabinet report. So that's it's sort of more the statutory, but we've put in, some of the texts and that type of things as to when we send them. So I'll send it on to Lynn and then she can circulate it.
Yeah, write off the cabinet report right at the end of the agenda, that everybody
Yes.
skips over that one there.
Yeah. And I spent so much time doing it as well. But yes, it's always included with it so that people can see, councillors can see what action we've had to take. Because again, write-off is a last resort. We do only write off debt if it's irrecoverable. Yeah.
And which key performance indicators are you having to do? I know that you got the collection one, which is usually the 96 or 97%. You know, is that the only one that you have to report against? Or
yes, it's the only statutory one. The other thing we do have is we report monthly on number of properties and the debit raised, because of course from a Rugby Borough Council point of view, as well as from a Warwickshire County Council point of view, it's about how much debit we raise as well, in order to go against their budgets. So we do those. We do again for our own sort of use with internally. We do the amount of people that are on a electronic billing and the amount of direct debits we've got. Because of course that's all going to go towards saving on cost postage type of thing. So we do. They're the only other performance indicators we collate.
Okay, thank you for that.
Noreen.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't want to dominate. I didn't know if anybody else wanted to speak. I just wondered if Chrissa could actually give us the information on how many people are actually referred to debt collection agencies and which. Bailiffs, and which companies that we actually use. Do we use a variety of them, or do we have a preferred choice of debt collection agencies that we use, and how are they monitored, please? If we could have that information would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I can send it to, I mean, some of them, obviously I know off the top of my head. We've got, we have a Warwickshire-wide contract with Bristow and Souter, so they're the only enforcement agent we use. We don't use anybody else. And they won in open competition to win the work, so we only send them to Bristow and Souter. We actually haven't sent any this year because of course of COVID. We decided internally to try and sort of contact people ourselves and collect that money. But I can actually supply you with the figures, yes, how many we usually would send every year, and how much is actually collected and how much is returned to us.
And is there any way of monitoring how these debt collectors operate when they're dealing with residents?
They have to send us copy of like complaints, all that type of thing. That's all part of the contract. So we do monitor them as part of the contract.
And if you find that they aren't behaving in a responsible way, what is the situation? Can we change the people that we use, or how are they held to account? That's my concern. If they're not behaving in a proper and professional manner and the way they enter people's properties, etc.
Yeah, I mean, we have regular monthly, well, three monthly catch-ups with the company director. So there would be recourse, because there's always recourse within the contract. But I mean, I'll go through the contract and I can copy you in to the details of the resource.
I think we'd like to have some scrutiny on how they operate, if that's possible. That would be really helpful. Thank you.
So I'll just made a note of that. So number, who we use, and if we're not happy, basically.
And if you have any complaints registered as well against them, please.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, because I'm aware I did make a complaint. I would like to know if that was actually noted. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe the overall number of complaints would be useful as well, if that's okay. Sally?
Thank you. Yeah, just a couple of questions, Chris. So what is the timescale between the letters that you send after the text messages to the people that are in arrears before you commence debt recovery? And then you mentioned that, and I do read the blue papers and your write-offs, you mentioned how you prefer them to keep their present debt up to date and then pay portions to cover their arrears. But obviously the write-offs can often cover a span of many years. How do you come to a repayment programme with these people that are getting in arrears year on year?
Right, well, I'll try and answer them one at a time. But yes, the flow chart that I shall send you has it has to be, like, for example, when we issue the bill, the first time we can send an instalment is a minimum of 14 days after the first instalment is due. So that's all on the flow charts. There's certain number of days that we can send reminders after. So it's all in there. But what we tend to do, we try and stick to within a monthly cycle. So obviously, majority of bills that are not on direct debit are going to be due on the 1st of the month. So, for example, on the 1st of April, an instalment would have been due. What we tend to try and do is we stick to sort of rules within a month. So on about the 14th of the month, we will send them a text to say that they've not paid the 1st of April instalment. Then on about the 21st of the month, we'll send them a reminder. So if obviously it gives them then those 7 days. So we try and stick to that sort of routine. And then on the following month, if they still haven't paid, they'll get the second reminder, or they'll get the second text, then they'll get the second reminder, roughly around the same sort of cycle of days. So we tend to, because as well, we try to do them on a month, physically because of the, obviously getting the phone calls, we try and produce everything on a Monday night so that it hits within the week. Because the worst thing we could do is send everything on a Thursday night and it hits on the Saturday morning and people can't contact us. So that's why we try and produce them, do all the recovery runs on a Monday evening, so that we do, as I say, so that they're sent, they receive them during the working week and therefore are able to contact us. So again, but as I say, the flow chart does give the number of days that we tend to that legally we've got to do, but for our purposes, practically, we try and send everything on a Monday evening so that it hits in the week. But again, with the texts, we'll send one text on the Monday night, well, the Monday during the day, then we'll send the actual paper reminders the following Monday. So that's when that's the cycle of how we try and do it, but that's more from a practical point of view as to what we can do. But yes, you're right, on the write-offs, very often there is some years sometimes, but it's because we've tended to try, we try and sometimes hold accounts, particularly if we're doing an attachment of benefit, because when we're doing an attachment of benefit, it actually is 5%. So somebody that's on a particular type of benefit, it's 5% that would be taken as their attachment to their benefit. But from a point of view of, we will try and hold other years whilst we're doing that recovery action, because there's also certain recovery actions that we can't do multiple things. We can't have, say, one with the bailiff, one with an attachment of earnings, that type of thing. So we can't always do multiple recovery processes together. So we do try and hold them. But of course, then if people, for instance, if somebody's made bankrupt at a later point, we've got no choice but then to write it off. Even though we've probably tried, we've in a way tried to help the person by holding them, so not collecting any more than they can afford to pay. But then sometimes, obviously, if at a later date they go bankrupt, then that obviously is an issue.
Yeah, so that's where we get left out of pocket and they don't get bankrupt. And yeah, it's more than unfortunate, but thank you for your explanation. Yeah.
The other thing that I don't know whether we will need to cover it in here. I don't know whether you've heard of, there's something that's happening from the 4th of May called breathing space. But I mean, I can probably send you some information, but basically the government have brought in this thing that they're calling breathing space. So anybody that is in debt that then goes to a financial support organisation, that organisation contacts all of their creditors, and they have to give them breathing space of 60 days. And we can't even contact the person in those 60 days or do any recovery action in those 60 days. So that's coming in from the 4th of May, but that is only when people have contacted a financial organisation like somebody like CAB.
Okay, thank you.
I just wondering if I could ask quickly sort of what the relationships were with like the Department of Work and Pensions, because I know the reason for debt a lot of times can be people have problems with claiming benefits, or they have a benefit stopped unexpectedly, or universal credit sometimes if they receive 2 wage payments in an assessment period, one at the start of the month and one at the end, it can be counted as one big lump sum within that assessment period, and they don't receive as much as they thought they had. I know you can challenge that now, but I suspect maybe that sort of has an impact on people, so whether you can communicate with the DWP directly and get that resolved for them.
It's even wider than that, really, from a council tax perspective, because people, particularly on universal credit, get a reassessment every month, and therefore then we get the notification from DWP of that reassessment, and then the CAS team have to recalculate their council tax support every month. So therefore it does mean that very often a lot of council taxpayers get a new bill every single month. And it has a knock-on effect that it's not always, obviously, if they haven't made their monthly instalment, of course, their bill could get recalculated from the following month. And it does have a big knock-on effect on, particularly on, universal credit claimants, and when their recalculation is every month. We get them automated and therefore automate their council tax support entitlement every month. So it does go out more or less straight away, but it depends on when in that month it falls as to when their instalments are recalculated from. So we do very often almost have to manually intervene in those bills before they go out, so that we recalculate it so that they've still got an instalment to make throughout the month. But generally from DWP, because we receive everything electronically and we automate them, at least they get done pretty quickly. And I know the CAS team do intervene with DWP if something doesn't appear quite right, or if the customer contacts us. We also obviously again encourage customers to make sure that they know they have to apply to us for council tax support, and not just assume that as part of their universal credit application that their council tax support case gets dealt with. So again, we try and make sure people know that as soon as they go onto universal credit, they have to complete one of our council tax support payment applications.
Okay, Noreen?
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask if we support people with debt relief orders or IVAs, individual voluntary agreements at all? Do we support people with those?
We receive notification of them, and of course, I mean, most of you will probably know from our write-offs, we can't, if somebody's gone bankrupt or in an IVA or a debt relief order, then any debt up to that point, then we can't collect any further. We have to write it off. If the insolvency service then receive any money as part of that, then they send it to us and we raise the debt. Right. So we can claw some of it back at some point. Yeah, we do. As long, with an IVA, I mean, that's should be the whole point of it, that they do pay back a lot of the debt. So as any money that the debt, any money that the debt insolvency service collect, then they pay a percentage back to all creditors. So, I mean, some customers agree to pay back sort of 70-80% of their debt. So eventually we get the money back, but what we do is write it off initially and then re-raise it throughout the year as and when we get the payments back.
Lovely, thank you.
I suppose one of the questions that maybe sort of we can explore together as part of this group, but maybe you've got some initial thoughts, is kind of what the awareness is like that people have about the support that's available. You know, whether sort of there's more early intervention that could take place to sort of stop people getting into these debts in the first place, or is that anything you've got any thoughts on? I know it's quite a big question.
I think it's a bit hit and miss, and I think it's always the same, isn't it? Though there's some people that would be well aware of that, but then you still get individuals, especially some people. I mean, we've certainly had quite a lot of people contact us in the current climate that have never been in debt in their lives before, but because of the current situation, they've got into debt for the first time in their lives, and they obviously don't know, they've never known what to do. Whereas you've got some people that have been in debt before and of course are well aware of who they can go to. I mean, I think we've always encouraged people to go to somebody that you don't have to pay for. So I think that would be my main concern, because I know, I mean, it's probably been a little while ago now that we were getting quite a lot of people coming to us that were then paying somebody to sort out their debt, which again, I certainly wouldn't be encouraging. But it's what information we can have to put it out there to people as to who they can contact. I mean, we certainly, I think we have some information on our website, not necessarily just against council tax, because of course it's all debt to the council, you know, particularly, you know, and that's why we try and work with housing as well, is so that if people have got multiple debts, particularly to the council, that we sort them out together. So if somebody is renting off us and have got a housing debt, then we try and work with a housing officer so that they pay us an amount of money, and it is split between the debts that they've got to us. But again, as I say, that doesn't include debts that they've got to other people.
Yeah, thank you. I think it was Jerry next and then Sally.
Yeah, that partly, I suppose, opens up where I was thinking, which was around communication, of how we communicate with people, really, about, you know, what's out there and what support there is, because there probably is quite a lot of support, you know, from the county, like Noreen's mentioned, Family Information, CAB, and probably quite a number of other organisations as well. And to be honest, haven't really looked on our website to see how available, or, you know, is that easy to read. Do we know from the people that we've dealt with how, you know, what their preferred method? You're saying like text was very efficient. You know, is it the mobile phone that we need to be thinking of if we're going to be communicating information to and advice to?
I think it does depend. As I say, we definitely, when we first started sending texts, it was researched not particularly by us, but by organisations, and that's what they said about that. If you compared a text to an email, because a text is instant, more people are likely to click onto a text straight away than, you know, an email that could only open up their emails once a week or something like that, you see. So text is compared to email, but also when we first started sending texts, we did get quite a lot of compliments, which obviously in our work we're not very used to, but there were a lot of people were saying thanks for, it was almost like as a bit of a reminder that they actually hadn't paid, as opposed to getting an official looking reminder through the post to tell them they hadn't paid. It was almost like, oh, it was just a prompt almost to pay. And also a lot of people were saying it's much easier to text, because we do obviously, also people can text back off our original text as well, so it's not like it's just a one-way text. Very often a lot of people text back, and a lot of people were saying at the time it's such a better service because they were in trouble, but they didn't feel like they actually wanted to speak to anybody, whereas they would rather text or eventually then email, rather than say actually speaking to somebody.
Sorry to interrupt. So on the text, do we put anything like a link to if they needed more information, or they just reply back to your text?
It's the texts, of course, have to be fairly short and snappy because of the cost, because we obviously have to pay per text message, and if it's too long, you're paying for multiple texts. So we try and stick to, I mean, even our text, and literally it says from Rugby Borough Council, you currently owe, say for example, £100 in council tax. Here is the link to pay, and even that is 2 texts, the cost of 2 texts. So we try and make them as sort of short with a link, but then if they want to respond to our text, then it comes straight through to us as a response to a text message.
Okay.
And we can obviously then respond out. But yeah, it's the size of a text. Doesn't you don't want it to be too long.
Okay. Perhaps something to explore as we go through on this journey.
Well, certainly housing. I mean, in fact, the housing service do use my system to send texts out to some of their customers as well, because their system hasn't got a text messaging facility at the minute. Although the new one that they're looking at, they bought and are working on, has got a text messaging facility, but it hasn't currently. So they do use my system to send texts out to people as well.
Right.
And I know IT are looking into other text messaging facilities that we've got that are available to people.
Okay, thanks for that.
Okay, Sally.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, as task group members, could we be privy to the wording of the letters? I assume they're in like an ABC and they get stricter as the letters go on. Are those letters written by us, or are they in set wording that is dictated to us from county or central government? And it's on another point, it's pleasing to hear about the text messages, and you're right, it's what you do see on your phone. However, you are hearing a lot about scams at the moment, and people are saying that you're in arrears and, you know, here's the bank details. How do we then protect people that receive this text and you're saying, please, you know, use this link to make the payment? Do you have some kind of clause to say, if you're unsure, please refer back to the website? I'm just worried about any scams, but I recognise it's a really useful way of prompting people, but to actually have a link to pay is a bit worrying. And again, I'm really pleased to hear that it's not just a one-way text, because I suppose people could even just text you to check. But you see, when it's a scam, they're still going to say, yes, we are Rugby Borough Council. Yeah. So, I just have a concern over the scams, and whether we could have the wording of the text messages and the letters, and who decides the wording in the first instance, to see if, as a task group, we can make any suggestions to perhaps add to that wording to give them more guidance for help for managing their debt. Thank you.
Yeah. Our system, you see, it's obviously fairly automated, that it produces a reminder or a text for anybody at that particular time that is an instalment behind, for instance. But yes, they're all Word documents within the system that it mail merges their information into either that text or that letter. So yeah, they're readily available. So I'll just cut and paste them all into one document, and I can send that again to Lynn as well. So there's both all the texts. There's just, as I say, it's almost like a mail merge facility that we just merge in and send it out. So yeah, so I'll do all of that. I'll do all the documents. I'll probably just put it onto one document and then send them all out to you, as well as the SMSs that we send out. But yeah, I mean, I must admit, we've been using Texas now for probably about 4 years or so now. I haven't come across anything where anybody's wondered if it's a scam. I mean, they may well have contacted us, but it mainly would go through to the contact centre. But it basically, that link takes them to Rugby's secure payment site. I haven't heard that there's been any issues with people being scammed, but obviously, yes, we've got to be aware that there is a possibility of that. But certainly, I've not heard of anybody contacting us to say they've been contacted by somebody else about paying their council tax.
No, thank you, Chris.
I think it's quite specific, as obviously has their reference number on it and the amount that they owe. So most people actually know that that's how much they owe. I think they'd probably query if it wasn't the amount that they thought they owed.
Right, through you, Chair. Thank you, Chrissa. That's reassuring because, as you say, if it's personalised in some way, you then do know that it does refer to you. Whereas when you get the telephone call about your Amazon £40 renewal, you know, that's a blanket call to everybody. But no, that's reassuring that obviously everybody has a reference number and they can check that before they make payment. Should they even be fearful that the link is a scam, which is happening in some situations, isn't it? So yeah, it's good to hear. Thank you.
Right. Anyone have any more questions or points they'd like to make? In that case, then the next item on the agenda is to a timetable and programme of work for the review. Oh, yeah, sorry, Norrie, do you want to come in?
Sorry, I had trouble getting it to share. I was just wondering, I don't know if it's possible if we could get a representative from the debt collection agencies, whether they'd be willing to attend a meeting to answer some of our questions. It'd be quite useful if that's possible. Is anybody there?
I think that sounds like a good idea.
It would be interesting to be able to speak to somebody from Bristow and Souter about how they operate. Be useful, thank you.
Yeah, Bristow and Souter, have always volunteered to come. They do quite a lot of talks to CABs, and I know they've definitely done the CAB here. They've done a talk to them, so they would be willing to come along.
Excellent, thank you. That'd be really useful. Thank you.
I think that's something we can maybe add to the future work programme then. Does anyone else have any other suggestions? I'm just thinking maybe would it be more efficient to sort of draft this and then circulate it to members before the next meeting, if that would be acceptable?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, it sounds to me as though the next meeting is, if possible, Bristow and possibly meeting with CAB or Warwickshire Family Information or something, gathering some evidence of what their views are.
Yeah, I think we've got some good stuff to go on and good suggestions. So, well, we'll work on putting that together and send it round.
And I suppose the broader question that will spin off, which I think has been said already, really, is that it's wider debt, isn't it, than just council tax? That's the danger. Whereas as a group, we're looking at council tax, but I suppose there's the wider issue of debt itself, which perhaps we may need to highlight as one of the recommendations.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we can't look at it in isolation, can we? We've got to look at the impact of where it goes from just one thing to another.
And how they're interlinked.
Yeah, here we are.
Right. So the date of the next meeting then, I'm guessing, Lynn, will this have to be after the 6th of May?
No, you're not really affected by the election for this task group. It just depends on members' availability and the amount of work you want to get done before your meeting.
What's everyone's thoughts on meeting before the election then?
I suppose it's the availability of people to come and speak to us, really.
Yeah, that's true.
As long as it's not on the 6th of May or the 7th.
Yes. Well, would the most sensible thing to do to be inquire with the people who want to come speak to us and get some dates with them and then send something around to members? Does that sound?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah.
I'm happy with that. Yeah.
Great. That's a lot easier then.
I will contact Bristow and Suter then.
Okay.
But I don't know who would be the best person to contact, like CAB or one of the other organisations.
I can get information for Family Information Service if you need it. If you want a contact there, we can get you some information.
Yeah, I think that's good. I'm sure we can get a contact for CAB as well to invite them. But
Bill Basra's the Chief Executive Officer, CEO.
Yeah. Right, maybe I can follow that up then. Great. Okay. Does anyone else have any sort of thoughts or any other comments before we finish then? Sally.
Sorry, I was trying to click all these buttons and try and get in. I just wanted to say this task group is about managing our council tax arrears and going into people's overall debt is quite a different ball game. And I think we need to really concentrate on how we help people with their council tax. I recognise that it's not looked at on its own, but we have to be careful that we don't start getting involved with the overall picture and what percentage of somebody's debt relates to their council tax, etc. I thought the remit for us is to see how we can help with recovering and helping our residents with their council tax arrears, not their overall personal debts, which could be credit cards and God knows what. And it will just open up another whole situation that I didn't think this task group was about.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair comment. I think because it is going to be interwoven with a lot of other stuff that it is going to come up, other forms of debt. But I think you're absolutely right that we should just keep our focus on the remit that we've been given and what specifically we can do to address that. So yeah, definitely. Jerry?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think we just need to be careful, as Sally said, that you could be dragged down particular avenues because of the wider debt. But I think being aware of it, so you can highlight it in a recommendation to say, perhaps these need to be looked at is fine. But as a group, we've got a clear one-page strategy we've agreed to, so no problem at all.
Yeah, happy with that. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
go ahead.
So having said that, Councillor Roodhouse, if we invite the Citizens Advice Bureau, they aren't going to have expertise on the managing arrears of our council tax. So I'm wondering whether we should only invite our debt collectors to the next meeting so that we're not opening up this can of worms of people's bigger personal debt.
I think Chris indicated that they do try and use citizen advice once you go in a presentation and a talk, and as part of the process of that. So part of my question to citizen advice would be how is that working? How is that going? What could they see any way of making improvements to it? Not without any, not getting into all the, they're bound to say it's just, they're bound to talk about universal credit and all the other debts, and that's fine. But bringing it back, I think Chris did sort of explain that at the beginning about part of the prevention work going through this was, signposting people towards CAB and the rest of it. So that's the sort of question would be more rationale for looking at it in that way.
Yeah, I accept what you're saying, and yes, I agree. But as long as Chris makes it clear to the Citizens Advice Bureau that what the remit is of our task group and how they help with our council tax arrears customers. Thank you.
Yeah. Right. Okay. If there's no more comments, then I think that we can call this meeting to an end. Mike, do we need to stop the live stream? Great.